about to say is very controversial, and before anyone tries to like get in the mince, I just want to caveat, you should watch this video in full before you go off by yourself down there. I know there's gonna be people who see the title and immediately go into the comments and like go crazy by themselves, but just, just watch the video first. Hey guys, welcome to today's video. My name is Chen. If you are new to the channel, welcome. Thank you for joining us. You can see from the title, I'm about to spill my tea that I've kept in, but I've lived in Korea now for almost 5 years, so it's been a minute, and obviously I enjoy living in Korea. I like my life here in Korea, but living in any country, there's gonna be pros and cons. I mean, living in America, there were pros and cons. When I was living in France, there were pros and cons, like pros and cons. But I did want to talk about things that I don't particularly love about living in this country. So the first thing is kind of the most obvious. It's the language barrier here in Korea. And I feel like any foreigner who lives in Korea and is not completely fluent in Korean will understand my pain. I'm super independent. I like to do things by myself, and I don't really like to ask for help if I don't need it. So for me, because of the language barrier, a lot of times I can't do stuff. That's on me, you know. I live in Korea, obviously I shouldn't expect them to speak English, and I don't, but I can't learn Korean instantaneously. You guys know, if you follow me for a while, I take Korean lessons pretty regularly, but being completely fluent in a language takes time and it takes practice, and it's a work in progress. Not quite there yet. The next thing is, if you guys know, I'm a big advocate for animals and helping the helpless and helping those without a voice. I've seen firsthand what happens to the dogs in particular in Korea, especially big dogs. What I'm about to say is obviously a blanket statement, but in Korea, generally, you're gonna find mostly small dogs as pets. So a lot of like poodles, a lot of Bichons, a lot of Maltese, kind of like small dogs, and they don't really love big dogs here. But here's the thing, they have a lot of them. In particular, Korea has a national dog that's called a Jindo, and it's so weird because it's the Korean dog. It's like a Korean breed, but they don't really love having them in Korea. Korean people don't really love mixed dogs. They don't love mutts. They love kind of pedigree pet store pets, which is so weird to me that they view them as lesser if they're not pedigree, because it's like not the case to me. If you go outside the cities, these dogs are chained up, huge like rusty chains, and they just live in like this little dog house outside on this short chain, and it just breaks my heart every time I see it. And also the problem is they don't neuter these dogs, so they chain up all these dogs, and then stray dogs are out, and then obviously like, and then babies happen, and then no one wants these babies because they're like mixed bred babies that apparently are dirty or whatever the case is, and they're also big dogs, so then no one wants them. So it creates this like kind of like endless cycle of unwanted dogs. Another problem here is in Korea, you're gonna find especially a lot of buildings, especially landlords, they have a very strict no pet policy, and it's really hard to actually find a building that allows you to have pets. And sometimes the landlord change their mind, like they'll say like, oh, you can have pets, and then later they'll be like, oh no, your dog is too noisy or something, and then you can't have it anymore. Also, if you're walking a big dog, people will literally go up to me like, how can you have such a big dog? That's a menace. And I know, and like people abandon dogs, and there's animal abuse everywhere, but because I volunteer at shelters, I've like seen firsthand these dogs. So to me, it's like a really personal thing. And you know, I'm just not a fan, all right? Like, not a fan. My third thing is, when you're a foreigner in Korea, you're kind of all grouped together as foreigners. So anything one foreigner does, that's whether positive or negative, it affects everyone. It's kind of annoying that that happens, because I don't want to be responsible for someone else's stupidity. When COVID, like that second wave hit, and it was like from a club in Itaewon, which is known as like a foreigner place, suddenly all foreigners were irresponsible because we were out clubbing, even though it wasn't even a foreigner who started the whole thing. It was like an area known for having a lot of foreigners. And the next one is, I think everyone's kind of heard this if you've watched similar videos, but it's really hard to meet and create like deep interpersonal relationships here in Korea. Even for me, a lot of if I've made foreigner friends, a lot of them are either, you know, they're just not, they end up not being like good fits with myself, or they go back to their home countries. So for a lot of people, like foreigners, we're kind of viewed as temporaries because we don't stay. And if you do meet Korean friends, it's very difficult to get in to that, like that level, especially if you don't speak Korean. But even if you do speak Korean, it's always kind of difficult to even like make those type of connections. I feel like a lot of Korean people are very close-knit, and it's hard to break into the circle. And even if you meet people while you're dating someone, like those are still always going to be like their friends. And yeah, my best advice for that is always to just like put yourself out there, but right now we can't do anything because we're all stuck at home. So maybe later. My next thing is I will never ever get past how old people don't give a f. Like they really don't care about you or anyone else around them. And I know people have talked about this before, but I, you know, firsthand know that it's so wild when these old people, it's like they could easily just walk around you. Like if you're standing still, like you're clearly waiting for something, they could just walk around you. And instead they literally put their arms here and they just push you. And I'm like, what? Maybe that's the way to live, guys. We should take notes. It's like I miss bathtubs, and it sounds like a very weird thing to say. If you live in these kind of one-room type of apartments, especially like provided by your, you know, your schools and your whatever, they're not gonna have bathtubs. They're just not. It's just not a thing here. And you know, I just miss having a bath.
Rubber ducky, you're the one. You make bath time lots of fun.
You're gonna have to like go to a hotel to get a bathtub, which is kind of annoying. And it's not a problem because you can survive. It's like a necessity, but it's just, you know, just sometimes I want to like take a bath. And my last thing is, I've lived in Daejeon, and I lived in on the other side of Seoul, in an area like close to this area called Jamsil. And then now I live in Hongdae. When I lived in Daejeon and I lived in Jamsil, I felt like I had a really like a serious lack of variety of food choices, especially when it came to delivery or just restaurants in general. Now that I live in Hongdae, it's very different. I have a lot more options. Depending on where you live, you're not gonna have as many food choices. And it's just gonna be a lot of like Korean food. Obviously that's to be expected because we live in Korea, but sometimes I don't want Korean food. I'm from New York, so I'm very used to having access to any type of culinary dish I want. I'm just used to having like so much access that when I moved to Korea, it was kind of a shock to my system. Over the years, I will say it has gotten a lot better, but depending on where you live, and I guess that's the case with America as well. But again, I'm from New York, so I just got used to certain things, and it wasn't met here. I genuinely don't like it. I'm not a fan. And I think a lot of people would agree with me if they live here. A lot of people might disagree with me, but I stand by what I said. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!